For Mark's Group Broadcasting, this is Emilie Boyles. Saturday afternoon, I had the opportunity to sit down in Helena on the state Senate floor after the close of session with State Senator Matt Rosendale. Here he is to give his weekly report from the horse's mouth.
Welcome to Helena, Emily. This week we are starting to get busy again. Some of the bills are making their way through the committees and onto the Senate floor. We did have a breakfast with the Farm Bureau earlier this week, so we had a contingency from Eastern Montana that came over and actually from around the state. After the breakfast, it was basically a legislative day, so we were able to discuss the issues that pertain and of our interest to the ag community that we are working on now. I think a lot of folks recognize that agriculture is the largest industry in the state, so we discussed the funding that goes to the experimental stations. The experimental stations are one area that we make an investment that is you can quantifiably measure the return on that investment in the terms of raised yields for the crops that the farmers are growing, and that translates into tax dollars returning back to the state. The other thing we discussed was a lot of the water issues. We've been passing through the water compacts. That is so that all of the water in the state of Montana is basically adjudicated and addressed, and ownership, if you will, is clarified to one individual or another. And so we've been working through that process. And then the irrigation projects, the funding that's been provided to them through DNRC, we discussed that. And then, of course, I myself have carried the bill for the irrigation voting to make sure that each member of that district who's actually getting water, whether it be for irrigating their crops or their lawn. I mean, we have folks that live in West Glendive that receive water from those projects, to make sure that their vote does get counted, which in the past hasn't necessarily been the case. We also have started working on the financing claims. I started having my morning meetings again, and we have approved House Bill 6 and House Bill 7, which goes into all of the DNRC projects, and that's not just for irrigation water, but that also has finally appropriated the funds for the Glendive sewer system and for the Savage Sewer District. They're trying to expand that and make sure that they can accommodate the future growth as well. One of the big things that we're starting to talk about is the Medicaid expansion, and how is Montana going to address that? And there's several different options that are about. We're looking at an increase of 70,000 participants if we follow the federal guidelines, and that could be problematic for the state once the federal government starts decreasing the funding to that system. The governor would like to put a trigger in that so that if the federal government does start decreasing the investment, that we could start pushing people off. I just don't see how we can accomplish that, how we can allow folks to enter a program and then 5 years from now start removing them from it. Which leads us to the sequestration. Once again, whenever we're talking about federal funding, at the beginning of the session, we had an orientation. I met with the fiscal division, and they said we were at risk for losing up to $51 million of funding because of sequestration. And as I look through the different departments and agencies now, I don't have the concerns that I did upon the beginning of the session on the negative impacts of that. It's something that's going to be phased in over a certain amount of time. The major recipients of federal funding would be the Department of Transportation and Health and Human Services, and we're just not going to see major impact. Transportation looks like it's going to lose about $17 million of funding, but on a $1.3 billion budget, that's not too bad. Had some visitors this week. The Lenharts, as I walked off the Senate floor today, they had been up for a coal council meeting. Past Representative Ralph Lenhart and his wife Shirley were here, so it was good to visit with them for a while. Very good.
And people who have questions about some of the processes and the bills that are still going through the legislature, how do they contact you?
Always can be contacted at Matt Rosendale at midrivers.com or the Capitol switchboard at 406-444-4800.
I will be back in Eastern Montana in a week or so. In the meantime, please do keep those news tips coming to newsdesk@kxgn.com. For Marks Group Broadcasting, this is Emilie Boyles.